Hey, everybody, welcome to my guest tonight. I've got a great guest joining us tonight, Danielle Orsino, fantasy novelist, martial artist, cosplay.
She healed with a tail, just a spark and a smile, then soared with the fae for a magical mile. Cosplayer queen, her Yorkie breathes fire. She's bringing the heat and fae-filled desire. It's Danielle Orsino, so buckle in tight. She's my guest tonight with Jeff Revilla tonight.
Danielle, welcome
I
to the
need a
show.
copy of that for my
Yeah.
ringtone, okay?
I'll send it to you. Every time I call,
Perfect.
that'll
That
be
was
the song.
amazing.
Well, you're free to use it anywhere. I'll send you over the video. A lot of the guests love the song that we create for them. And we're kind of doing a little foreshadowing. We're telling you the story that we're about to tell you. And we're going to go back through your journey and see how you got to where you're at and see what parts of your past tie together to make you who you are today. So where are you calling in from?
I'm actually in New York. I'm a New York girl.
Oh, have you been there all your life?
I kind of traveled around a little bit. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina most recently, but I'm back home in New York.
Very nice. And you got your starting in a completely different field because we're going to talk about some books later on, but you started off, I believe, in nursing. Is that correct?
Yes, I was a nurse. I was a martial artist before that. That's kind of where I primarily was. And then I always say you learn to beat them up and then you patch them up and went into nursing.
I love that. So how old were you when you got into the martial arts?
I started at about 18, 19. It wasn't something I was looking to do. I tend to fall into things. I'm kind of like a Looney Tunes character. I just fall down the manhole and see where I end up. And that's what happened even with martial arts. I just ended up there.
Just out of circumstance, or was there somebody offering a trial class, or did you go with a friend?
No, I wanted to go to New Orleans with my best friend, Jen. And my dad was like, I'm not sending my 18-year-old daughter to New Orleans because we were reading Anne Rice. And we wanted to go run with the vampires and all that stuff. So what we wanted to do was go on the Anne Rice tour. And my dad was like, no. And he said, if you get your yellow belt, I'll let you go. Thinking there's no way she'd ever do it. And I walked into a Taekwondo class at my gym. And so the rest was kind of history. I gave my instructor, he did not have gray hair. He did when I left. I made that man's life miserable. We both did. But at the end of it, I became a martial artist. I did not start out. I didn't think I'd like it. It was just something to kind of, a means to an end.
So it
And I
was a
wound up sticking with it.
negotiation tactic to go on
Yes,
a trip.
that's all it was, really.
So you go there, you start studying, you're learning the moves, you're learning, you're kind of getting empowered too. You're
Yes.
learning techniques that protect yourself. You're learning how to make moves to make sure you're in a safe zone or a safe position. What was it in those early days that kind of got you addicted to the sport?
I realized I was good at it. It wasn't something I thought I would be good at, but as a comic book lover, this was as close as I was ever going to get to being Batgirl, to being Wonder Woman. This is what I was doing. I was doing Yvonne Craig high kicks. It's the first thing you learn is a stretch kick. And I did it and I was like, wait a minute, Batgirl did this. It was kind of one of those where you're like, I've seen these moves before. And you start realizing, okay, this is as close as I'm ever going to get. And then I was like, I'm not half bad at this. Yes, I had to work hard. It was not something that like naturally I was just falling into splits and being like, look how great I am. I had to work really hard, but the time went by fast. All of a sudden, look up class was over, and my instructor believed in me. I only paid for the first month. After that, I never paid for another class for the next 10 years. So it was also odd to have someone believe in you. And from there, it was interesting to work with your body and kind of do these things that, yeah, you read about in comic books. And all of a sudden you're throwing, a punch or you're throwing a front thrust kick. And you're like, this is kind of cool.
Well, you revealed something else in there that goes back even further than your start in martial arts was comic books. You mentioned you've seen these moves done by Catwoman and the other comic book characters. So prior to even finding martial arts, you were involved with the comic book culture and the different animated series. What How old were you when you kind of found out about comic books and these superhero
Mhm.
characters?
Um, I remember Adam West, Batman, Yvonne Craig, Batgirl, Burt Ward, Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt. Those were my first introductions. And then like Super Friends and things like that. And then Linda Carter came on. And that was just, oh my God, who is this woman? What is happening here? She just turned the paradigm. It flipped everything. So I just remember being sat down in front of the TV. That was my babysitter, was the TV. And being like, what is this? And then wanting more and getting, I think I had, oh, this is going to show my age. I think I had a record, like a Wonder Woman disco record, where you read
Mhm.
along. And so from there, it was like when the TV shows weren't on anymore, I'm like, where do I get more of this? I didn't want anything else. I just wanted, so it was coloring books and then it was comic books. So I was reading those before I read Hop on Pop and went from Hop on Pop to Dark Phoenix. It was like, it was that kind of jump. And then that's it. I was just in and I wanted to know everything and absorbed it. And all the animation, everything just kind of fell into it. And that's where I stayed.
That's so interesting. You're mentioning emulating these characters once you start Taekwondo, and you're listening to the records and building these worlds in your brain as you're hearing these stories and envisioning what the superheroes were doing. Then you start use Taekwondo as a negotiation tactic to go on a vacation, but you really liked it because you had all that history as a child growing up, the babysitter
Mm.
of the TV and Adam West. Some days you can't get rid of a bomb. One of my favorite memes on the internet.
Over the head.
and and so then you also mentioned that you beat them up and then you patch them up. So now you've gone from somebody who loves comic books, you're kind of emulating them now, and then you start to get into nursing. Or how was that? How did you find that transition or that passion to move into study into nursing?
I always thought I'd wind up somewhere in healthcare. I thought I'd go to medical school and I wanted to be a doctor. It was kind of in that area. I enjoyed it, but my passion for martial arts took over. I was competing professionally and it just doesn't leave room much for anything else. And I thought maybe I'd open up a martial arts school. It was kind of one of those. But as you're going through this, you're surrounded by Eastern Western meds and you get a lot of injuries. That's just how it happens. I mean, I had every injury known to mankind, and you're seeing different doctors and learning different ways to heal. And so eventually you cannot compete your whole life. You just can't. Your body cannot take it. I learned it when I transferred into wushu. Your body is not meant to flip on the ground and land on your back with your head up and do suicide flip. It's just not meant to do that. As much as you want to think it, I couldn't take that many punches anymore. I was still fighting. And eventually you have to know when to go. I think it's time to hang it up. It just is. And stability becomes a factor. It was great when I'm traveling up and down the East Coast, from Friday to Sunday. You still got to pay the bills. So nursing just seemed to be the next transition. And I had learned so much through personal training and, being in PT places, physical therapy constantly. Eventually you kind of learn it. So going into nursing just felt like the natural progression. So I just went in that thinking, okay, I'll kind of get through nursing and I'll approach it the same way I did martial arts. Learn the belts, go medical assistant, go to nursing, and then go nurse practitioner or physician's assistant and work my way up through the system so I could understand it. And that's what I started out to do. And then the universe was like, hey, here's a pebble, here's a boulder, and we're going to kind of wreck that and give you a new plan.
I mean, was nursing as fulfilling as the martial arts, as the comic books?
Mm.
Was there things about it that really pulled you in, or was it just it wasn't really a passion?
It was a passion to a point. It was still helping. I like that. And I found fulfillment helping when I was teaching martial arts. There was still that connection and that personal connection, which I liked. And I did it through personal training. So I enjoyed that. But I noticed there was still a creative aspect that was missing. And I didn't quite catch it. During that time, I had done a clothing line at one point. I was always kind of going back to the creative way, but I was trying to be logical. That was like my Spock side being like, hey, you're not going to make money this way. Find the logical pursuit. Do this, do this. So it was fulfilling to a point, but I kept thinking, I've got to go to the next level. I've got to go to the next level. I was still always reaching. And that probably should have been like, that little red flag going, something's not right if you're constantly reaching. And so it was fulfilling, but something was missing. And I wasn't sure what that was.
And it was it during the time of when you were nursing that you started to find cosplay? Where you like, oh, I could develop characters, or I could role play as some characters, and kind of meet some of that creative fulfillment? Maybe that what you were lacking in the martial arts and the movements. Was it while you were working as a nurse that you found cosplay?
I didn't know I was cosplaying when I was cosplaying, even doing martial arts. I showed up to one of my tests with a Wonder Girl Deborah Winger outfit on underneath my uniform, my dobok, to give me a little bit of a lift. I was cosplaying well before it was cosplay. When I was nursing, I was going to Comic Cons and doing all this, but I was still reading my comic. I was still so into the world that it never left me. So it was always part of me. um, when I was nursing, I was still kind of joking Wonder Woman was a nurse, so I still felt like, it was kind of like I'm still part of the world. Like when I graduated nursing school, I made my uniform, my graduation, because we had to wear the old school nursing dresses. I was like, we had to go to a uniform place to pick it out. And I went to my teacher, I was like, look, Wonder Woman was a nurse in the 1940s. So if I wear that, is that okay? She's like, bring me a picture. I brought her a picture of an old Wonder Woman comic, showed it, and I was like, it's really similar to the uniform. And she's like, you make it, you can wear it. And I showed up Wonder Womaned out, exactly the dress from the comic book. And she was like, and I got my friend to wear one too. I made her one, and everybody was like, I'm like, I'm Wonder Woman, man. I have Wonder Woman outfit on underneath and everything. Like, I was always infusing comic books into it, but there was something missing. I was holding on to that comic book thing, and I would get the whole IV room. Like, I believe it was the first Captain America that came out at one point, and people were all talking about it. And I was like, well, if you really want to get technical, and I would be like, this is canon, this is, and they were just like, I just think Chris Evans is hot. And I'm like, but you know who really tried out for the part? John Krasinski. And I would just go off, and they were just like, what is wrong with you? Can we just watch the movie? So it was just always part of me. But like I said, something was still missing.
And did you see it? Maybe it was starting to like slip out through the cracks. During
Oh, it
your
was
nursing
always,
career, you're telling story. You probably just coded somebody, and then you're telling the backstory to Wonder
always
Woman
there.
at the same time.
I would joke my nerd slip was always showing. Like it was just always peeking out. I couldn't keep it in. I have a Wonder Woman tattoo. I would come in, when I was having a real bad nursing day, I had my Wonder Woman bracelets I would wear underneath my scrubs. And I always had long sleeves because it was cold. Um, my nursing, my nerdiness was always coming out. There was no way to hide it. I had a big Wonder Woman mug. I remember I must have done something for a patient, and I went out to my car, and there was a huge Wonder Woman soup mug stuck like in my car, and it just said thank you. There was a note that just said thank you. I still to this day have no idea who left it, but everybody kind of knew. There was no way I was hiding it anymore, and I didn't try to. It was just like I'm a nerd, I'm a geek. Before it was geek chic,
Mhm.
I was there. I was there with it. So I didn't try to hide it. I was always trying to get the doctor to like dress up for Halloween. And I'm like, can we? She's like, no, Danielle, you can't. I'm like, no, I promise I'll be you. She's like, nope. And I always got Comic Con off. She knew I was not working on Comic Con. And I got her to go. I went with her and her son, and we all went dressed up. She went as Harley Quinn, he went as Nightwing, I went as Batgirl. It infiltrated. It infiltrated the place.
During this time, you're sharing cosplay with people. You're sharing your love of comic books and the history with people. Do you start jotting down notes, or creating your own little stories in your head, or are there things that are happening beyond that creatively? are you starting to think of stories and put things together that you could someday call your own?
No, I thought everybody, like, had an inner monologue and narrated their whole life. I found out later, no, they do not. It is not Scrubs. I thought everybody did this. When I spoke to other authors, a couple of them admitted that, yes, they do that. I thought the whole world worked like this. I was never planned on being a writer. Nothing. I thought maybe one day when I was younger, I would work in comic books, but no. I did not know this was gonna happen. I just thought everybody walked around like I said, like Scrubs. I thought I was JD and I was, like, narrating my life. I had theme songs going on, and I saw the world very differently and really thought the whole world was like me. Found out later, no, I may need to get medication for it, and there's not everybody has as many voices in their head as I do. But no, there was no plan at all. Not at all.
But you also found out that that's a characteristic that other authors have, that they're constantly working words and stories through
Yes.
their head and telling it. And so you kind of have this superpower that you're developing where you're telling these stories, you're telling your story and
Mhm.
you're building on that. And that really is practice for, you said you didn't go to school to train to be an author,
Not at
but
all.
somehow you're able to do that. And one way you connected with other authors was sharing this experience that you have with this inner monologue. And they're like, oh, yeah, we have that too. So,
There are some authors that are like, "I totally have it." There are others that are like, they give me this look like, "You okay there, honey?"
yeah.
But there are some who have come forward and been like, "Yeah, I" some of them say that they do an inner monologue, that they write their story as their day goes on. Yeah, I tend to, like I said, I narrate. I thought people did this, and like I said, not everybody does, but it was prepping me. And I think it does come from comic books because comic books are told in this omniscient point of view where there's always, you go back to the old Batman where there was always the voiceover. Will they get away? Stay tuned next time, same bat time. I was kind of doing that, and I do think it comes from comic books.
And when you decided to maybe make the leap, or how did you get into writing? Did you just one day say, I'm going to write a book, or did you start putting notes together and start piecing little short stories together? What was the transition from nursing into becoming an author?
I fell through the manhole cover again. A patient just said he didn't want to drip anymore. And he was like, "Well, keep me entertained, keep me in the chair, tell me a story." And I said, "Well, tell me something about yourself." He had mentioned that he was recruited by the CIA out of college. And I had known this person. We started the same day. We were very connected. And I'm like, how did I not know that? So, out of my mouth, and to this day, I have no idea why. We went down the conspiracy rabbit hole about Lyme disease and all this other stuff. And I said, "Well, you know where Lyme really came from." And he goes, "No, what?" And I said, "Psst," and I have no idea why I said it. I said, "The Fae." Don't know why I said it. And all of a sudden, I started telling him this completely crackpot story about how a CIA agent was really at this Lyme clinic to find out if this nurse was a Fey human hybrid and does she have the cure for Lyme. And I just started blabbing something. And finally he went, "Who are the Fey?" And I'm like, "Great question. The Fae are," and I come out with this whole thing about how the Fae are angels who were locked out of heaven, and there are polytheistic gods and goddesses throughout history. And every day he sat down, I told him a new chapter and just made it up. And people started listening, going, "Huh? What are you talking? What book is this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just talking." Like I was just like, "I don't know what I'm saying." And I just kept telling him stories. And he was like, "Go home and write this down." And I'm like, "No, I'm going to physician assistant school. I have my interview. I'm going to pump some faces full of Restylane and leave me alone because that's the track I'm on." And he was like, "Go home and write this down." And I fought it for months. And then I told my husband, he was like, "Go write it down." He's like, "This isn't a bad story. Go write it down." And finally, I started writing with the intent to write one book. And I wrote 6 books all at once because just like the voices in my head, I jumped around. I'd start writing something and be like, "Huh, why did that happen?" And then I'd grab another journal and I hand wrote another one. And before too long, I had journals that made no sense of just this history of the Fae. And that's where it all came from.
And that's the series you're referring to, The Birth of the Fae, and you said it's a 6-book series.
Yes, it's now called Legacies of Light and Dark because that's pirated by Meta and the
Oh,
lawyers told me to change it. But yes, it became 6 books, 2 novellas, volume 2, which is actually the real story that I started telling this guy. And this patient is the protagonist in it, Agent Graham. That's who it's based on. That's coming out in October. But yes, I wound up writing all together 9 books in one sitting. And I had no idea, and I still have all of the journals that I hand wrote. They've been through obviously tons of changes, but yeah, that's what it started as, and it became, what we now know as the Legacies of Light and Dark series. We're rolling out the new covers and everything, but it's a history of the Fae, starting from the day they are here on Earth up to what will be. It's called a Fool's Journey. That's the second volume, the first book of the second volume, up to modern day, and that's what it is. And volume 2 is based in a Lyme clinic in Westchester County. So it's my time as a nurse.
that is one of the most amazing origin stories I've ever heard. Just that you were sitting there and you came up with this, and you came up with that from all the things in your past, your love of comic books, your martial arts background, the things you've learned through nursing and the things you've seen. And you've come up with this story trying to entertain somebody. And it's a 9-book series. That's
Yeah, my husband looks at me every now and then and he's like, "You realize you wrote this?" And I kind of look at him and go, "Okay." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, because he proofreads everything, and he laughs because in volume 2 there's a lot of comic book references. And Morgan, who's the nurse in it, she's got a comic book tattoo on her shoulder. And the CIA agent who's trying to figure out if she's a Fey hybrid takes the name Clark from Kent, Connecticut. And he does it specifically because she's such a comic book geek. He's like, she's the only one who's going to get this reference. So when they meet and she goes, "Oh my God, you're Clark Kent." And everybody in the seat, like, who's listening in, is laughing at him because he's like, "There's no way this is going to work." And he's like, mic drop at work because he's got to read all these comic books. And he's like, "Oh, I've never heard that joke before," and he walks away kind of laughing. And that's how they start bonding, is over her love of comic books and things like that. So it's me. But my husband looks at me and he's like, "How many nights were you up writing this stuff?" And I'm like, "You see, all those comic books paid off." I'm like, "All those movies I dragged you to, now they're paying off." But yeah, that's what it came from.
they were an investment. We were investing in our
That's what I
future.
like to think. That's what I like to think.
And you have the 9 books out. Do you see the story developing further, or do you have other stories in the works?
Right now we have volume 1 is out. That's books 1 through 6. We have 2 novellas in that. And then the next one, A Fool's Journey, comes out in November, and that'll start volume 2. I have all of volume 2 is finished. It's not out yet. And then I have started volume 3. We're working with Mythia, a choose your own adventure game, and we're doing games based on the worlds. And that's kind of starting us off on a different kind of piece of those worlds, where people will be able to immerse themselves. And I may do other things. I'm not really sure. This is so new to me. As long as I've been writing this, it's funny. I just have to look at a copyright, and I'm like, I've been doing this for like 8 years. I'm still like, wow, oh my gosh. But I don't know where I'm going to go just yet. I do have some ideas, but I really enjoy writing the Fae, writing Morgan and Graham. I'm just having such a good time. I don't know if I really want to leave it just yet. I'm having so much fun with it, and I enjoy putting comic book references in and pop culture references. I like that, so I'm not, I kind of like just sticking here and playing around a little bit.
And as a fan of Comic Cons and you're cosplaying yourself, do you ever see yourself maybe at some type of event for authors or for stories of this nature where you're on the other side of the table, where you're have your own booth at some point?
I've done some Galaxy cons like that. I've had a good time. My ultimate goal would be to do a graphic novel. based on volume one, which is, more epic and mythic fantasy. I would love to do that and then be at a con where I have got a graphic novel and I've got that visual art that I loved so much and that put me here. I'd love to give that back. That's really, my thing. I look at people that I've admired, like Stephanie Williams, Jim Steranko, and I cannot say enough nice things about Jim Steranko. He's just a doll. Um, but I would like to follow in those footsteps in the sense of visual art and seeing something like that. I have spoken with Mike Lilly, and he's possibly drawing a little something up to see where we go with it. But that's where I'd like to take the Fae is into graphic novel, comic book kind of stuff, and see it realized in that because I think ultimately that community gave me this. So I want to give something back to it and be part of it as a cosplayer and as an artist.
And while you feel part of that community, you said you didn't necessarily start out to be an author or a writer.
No,
That found you, and that was inside of you. You then have now
definitely.
gone a step further and created a podcast once upon an author. So now you're kind of all in on telling stories of, is this a podcast for to tell stories with other authors, or is it this story of your journey of becoming an author?
It's the stories behind the stories. It's everything I've done wrong as an author, and I've done a lot, and the stories behind how I got here because it is a bit unorthodox on how I got here, and it is to kind of let people know there are some scams out there. There are, believe it or not, there's some publishing scams, but how I got here, I always say, if you want to know what not to do, come talk to me because I've probably fallen for it. I've fallen for, I love this one. This was my favorite one, an author style life coach. And they told me they were a proofreader, and I only found out afterwards, after they handed me the bill, that they were a life coach. So it's things like that, reading your contract right, what happens when you get the contract and it's still not right, royalties, things like that, but also just my love of comic books. Every episode starts with a song and a comic book quote that ties into what's going on. And it's a little about self reflection. It's not just for writers. Writers will obviously get something out of it, but it's for the everyday person. And it's trying to give my experience and let people know I've probably been there, done that, got the t shirt, and I've messed it up. But I think at the end of the day, I'm still where I'm supposed to be. I probably took the longest way possible to grandma's house, but I got where I'm supposed to be. I just tend to fight the universe, which I think we all do at some point. Uh, I've often said, I like to think I'm like Wonder Woman, but I'm really Harley Quinn. I can't get out of my own way, and there's a lot of voices in my head, but I really want to be Wonder Woman. So it's kind of those stories of how I've messed up, but I've overcome them. And the fact of the matter is, I've had to start over. So it's real time. If the book succeeds, you're going to watch me succeed. If it fails, you're right there with me because I hate those author stories at the top of the mountain. We've all seen them on A&E or whatever, where it's, George R. R. Martin being like, oh, it's so great with my millions of dollars. And I'm like, you wrote for the X Files, dude. If you had every connection at the in the palm of your hand, do you really know what suffering's like as an author? I don't know, like I hate those stories where Hollywood spins it. So I'm trying to show you it's a little different.
Do you have a favorite episode? How many episodes have you put out so far?
I do one season is 6 months. I did one every week. So there's about 24 episodes. I did this on I was actually on an AM station, WWDB in Philly. So I also did video with it as well. And then I'll do my next season in October. Whether I stay on AM radio, I don't know. I may just do my own thing because it's a little more fun and then I can curse because I got a little bit of a mouth like a truck driver. So I don't have to censor myself so much. But yeah, we've done 24 episodes. They're up on my YouTube channel and they're also on WWDB's website as well. But yeah, I'll do probably another 24 per season. I also have myasthenia gravis and inclusion body myositis, which are both chronic diseases that can limit what I can do. So I try to just do seasons instead, and then kind of go from there.
Did you have a standout episode, or you just recommend, "Hey, start at the beginning, you're gonna get a great story the whole way through"?
I try to tell everybody start at the beginning, but my favorite episode is probably one of my dragon episodes where I explain where my dragons come from and working with my vet. At the time, it was Dr. Gil Stanzioni from Dakota Vet. He was one of the people I worked with to design my dragons, and how much fun it was. It's a 2 episode series on that one. It's a two-parter, and it was just so much fun explaining where the dragons come from because I have fire, ice, acid, and the fact that we built them from their digestive systems out and everything that went with it. So it was that one was probably one of the standouts.
Danielle, this has been so much fun. This is probably the best origin story that we've woven through to see who you are today, and I just enjoyed this half hour with you. If people wanted to connect with you or find your books or bring you out to a their own local Comic Con, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Best way to reach me is I'm most active on Instagram. So that is DM Orsino author, Orsino. And you could always go to my website, dmorsino.com, and reach out to me there. I do answer all my stuff. And I always tell everybody to sign up for my newsletter that has all my information. And you can always grab me that way. But Instagram's the way to go. I'm on Facebook, but I'll be honest with you, I don't check it that much. So Instagram's the way to find me. All the
Awesome.
books are on Amazon as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's go back to that theme song.
She healed with a tail, just a spark and a smile, then soared with the fae for a magical mile. Cosplayer queen, her Yorkie breathes fire. She's bringing the heat and fae-filled desire. It's Danielle Orsino, so buckle in tight. She's my guest tonight with Jeff Revilla tonight.
Yeah, the song references a fire-breathing Yorkie. We didn't even mention Carlos.
Ooh, how could you not? Yeah, Carlos is my little Yorkie. He plays a dragon in the book. So he's in there. And then my little Chewini Penelope is a white deer later on in the series known as Lady Penelope. So all of my animals are in the books, and all of my friends' dogs are dragons in the books as well.
Oh, now you have to go to the Instagram to see the
Got to check it
photos
out.
of these of the dogs.